Good evening, team. A warm welcome to the day 2 session of Web Services Testing. Myself, I'm Uday with IT Learn. Let's have a quick look at the agenda of today's. So we have only two items here for today. One is a quick recap of day 1, and the second one is we'll be working on the project. So yesterday, as a part of day 1, we have discussed a few points like who can opt this training, what sort of presentation is there from the IT eLearn side when it comes to the training, what can you expect from the training, and we did start a project as well. So who can opt this training? Basically one who doesn't have any prior experience and is fresh out of college and looking for a career in software testing can opt for this training, and also one who is already into QA or a test engineer or a lead position, okay, basically who are already into testing practice and want to move into web services can opt this training. Okay, and there's a little bit of scope for the developers as well to get into this training who are into web services development, because by attending this training they'll get good knowledge of good working exposure, to be precise, of how the testing goes on web services, so that they can emphasize on the quality by covering all possible loopholes while developing the web services. Okay, and what can we expect from the training? What we have discussed yesterday is, number 1, we'll get hands-on exposure on web services testing. Number 2, the participants or the trainees will be job ready by the end of the course. By the time of the completion of the course, we will be job ready, and which in turn says that we can crack the interviews easily. Okay, and the third item of the agenda which we have discussed yesterday is how the presentation or how the training goes at IT Learn. We basically believe in pure practical approach. The concepts will be explained as well on the fly while working on the projects. So in a way, we are covering the practical aspects as well as the theoretical aspects as much as needed to crack an interview. And added to that, as a part of the practical sessions, we will be having loads and loads of assignments, and we will be having the videos as well for your reference, and we'll be having the study material as well for your reference during and post the training. And then we had started with the project yesterday. We tried to understand the application, and also we tried to understand the scope of testing from a manual testing perspective. And we also tried to understand the scope of testing from web services testing perspective as well. So team, today we're going to start, for the benefit of those who had registered today and who are attending this session today, we're going to start the project again. So even before, it is divided into 3 parts. First of all, we look at the project intro, a quick introduction of the project. Let's kind of recap again of yesterday's session of the project, and we'll try to understand the scope of the testing of the project, of the application. When I say project, it's application now. So the scope of the testing from the manual testing perspective of the application, and then we'll try to create a manual test suite, and we'll execute the manual test suite, and we'll talk about a little bit of reporting from the manual testing side. Then we'll move on to the web service testing perspective. When I say web service testing, we'll look at we'll first try to understand the scope of web service testing for the same application. Even before that, we'll see a couple of concepts as well, maybe a few minutes around that, to give you a fair idea of what a web service is and how it works. So how to think when you think of testing the web services. And then we'll create a test suite for web service testing, and then we'll look into Soap UI tool. Soap UI tool is the web service testing tool, which is a freeware and available over the net. And in the subsequent session, in the third session, we will be guiding you to install that and how to use that and the different options that we have on the IDE. Why did we choose Soap UI is basically because of the wide features it does have, and also the market capture when it comes to the jobs in web service testing. So we'll work with Soap UI. We try to create the test suites using Soap UI, and we'll execute the tests using Soap UI, and we'll look at the reporting as well as a part of today's session. And the project goes on for one more session where we'll be seeing some sort of advanced concepts like assertions, okay, XML validations sort of thing. So having said that, I'll quickly move on to the project. As said, first of all, we'll look from the manual testing perspective. So we have the test data sheet as a part of the manual testing, where I placed the URL of the application. I'll be sharing this across, okay, and we'll talk much about the test data in a while. So first of all, let me take the URL. This is the URL, and once you click on the URL, you will get navigated to this page. So this is our application. It's a simple application. Basically, we take simple applications except for the project, live project, which you are going to keep in your resume, which you are going to add that as a part of your resume. Okay, except for that project, all the other projects will be simple enough so that you can concentrate more on the web testing, the web service testing concepts and Soap UI, rather keeping your time to understand the application. And yes, the live project which you are going to keep in your resume, by that time you will get fair understanding or good enough understanding of web service testing concepts, the basic concepts, and we'll move on to the advanced concepts, so that you'll get a good understanding on the application as well and the web service testing, and you can keep it as a part of your resume. Having said that, let's try to understand what this application is. So it does allow us to convert the temperature from Fahrenheit to Celsius and Celsius to Fahrenheit. So it's a simple application, as I told earlier. You give values here, say submit. It will fetch the temperature being converted for you. So 21 Fahrenheit will be minus 6.111, so on. You can round the value as well. That's the Celsius value. Okay. Similarly, we'll try to look at the Celsius to Fahrenheit conversion as well, just to try to understand the application. So we could see the conversion here. So this is what it is, the application in simple, which will help us to understand the basics or the overview of web service testing. We'll quickly move on to creating so from a manual testing perspective, if you look at this particular app, what all we can validate? We can validate the display of these two text boxes and the display of the submit buttons, and the submit buttons should be enabled. Okay. And what else can we validate? We can validate the functionality of Fahrenheit to Celsius by giving the value here and submit and cross verify with the result. And one more functionality it's providing which we can validate is Celsius to Fahrenheit, and click on the submit button. You get a value, you get the response, and we need to validate our test data against that value and see if at all the application is behaving as expected. Okay, we'll try to quickly see some test cases as well. So if at all from a manual testing perspective, if you're a manual test engineer and you're asked to write some test cases around that, where we need to start is first we need to understand the application. In real time you'll not get the application as well as such, but you will be getting the requirement documents which will have the screenshots and the flow and the field validations as well, saying that this field will accept these many number of values and this is the functionality of this field, kind of thing. Okay, so in the real time or the real world, when you start working on a project, we will start with the traceability matrix as the foundation stone or the first step, I can say. So you take the requirement document, you go through the requirement document, and then you understand the requirement, you pick the requirement ID, and you start writing the test scenarios. What is a test scenario? A test scenario is nothing but a group of test cases belonging to the same or similar functionality, we can say. For example, here we are trying to convert Celsius to Fahrenheit and Fahrenheit to Celsius. Okay, this can have a test case which does validate Fahrenheit to Celsius separately and Celsius to Fahrenheit separately. So we have two test cases which does talk about the same functionality. So we call that as a test scenario. A test scenario, again team, for the benefit of you, I'm repeating it. A test scenario is nothing but a set of test cases or group of test cases which does talk about similar functionality or same functionality. Okay, once we identify the test scenario, we give a ID to it, a unique identification. We can add the test scenario name as well. If you wish, you can add this, the test scenario name. Something relevant and meaningful should be there so that others can understand, the other team members can understand. So I'll say simply temperature conversion is my test scenario name, and in this test scenario I'm having two test cases. So we'll quickly jump on to the test cases as well. Okay, we'll look at the functional test cases first and we'll try to execute those test cases. Once we are done with the manual testing perspective, we'll move on to the web services test cases as well. And we'll try to use SOAP UI, create the test suite, run the test suite and report the same so that you can figure out the differences between web services testing and manual testing, how different it is or what are the similarities. And on the fly we'll be looking at some acronyms as well, like any new term that we come across we're going to put it here, and so that it will act as a further reference for you guys, for the entire team. So looking at the functional test cases, so as a first step we'll be invoking the URL. So as a first step, you can see we are trying to invoke the application. Invoke the application using the URL from the test data. So I'm trying to write a test case to validate Celsius to Fahrenheit conversion. Okay, as a first step you need to see the application. For that you need to use the URL from the test data sheet. And team, you can have the test data here, place one more column and you can place the test data corresponding to that particular step. However, if the test data is more, it's a common and best practice to move the test data to a separate sheet, which we call it as segregation of test data, so that it will help us, or it will be easy for us to maintain. So once we do this action on the action, we are expecting the home page to be displayed. The application home page will get or should get displayed. Your manual test cases should be as simple as possible. Okay, and they should be in simple English, so that if you move out to a different application, someone else will be executing these and they should be understandable. Okay, so first point is we pick the URL and we go to the application home page, and then we did see the application as well, right? Actually we'll have a requirement document with the screenshot and the flow. So here what we are going to do, we are going to validate Celsius to Fahrenheit. So what could be our next step? Enter valid values in the Celsius text box. Okay, the values should be accepted and displayed. And team, you might think this is a simple step, but when it comes to validating the passwords or encrypted data, this particular step plays a key role. Okay, and the third step would be you click on the submit button. You are basically submitting the data or the temperature that has to be converted from Celsius to Fahrenheit. So a new page should get displayed with the converted Fahrenheit value. Okay, so you can repeat these steps for whatever number of values that you want to test, because when we look at the traditional testing, manual testing perspective, we can use the testing techniques that are available, like checking the values at the boundaries or some unique values likewise. So we'll repeat this step. We'll repeat the steps 1 to 3 for the values in the test data sheet. Okay, and the corresponding values should get displayed is our expected value, expected result. So we are done with our manual test case. So we are done with our manual test cases. Let's look at preparation of the test data. So we can give any values here. I'll say -40 is the value where both the values will be the same, and we give some other values as well, say 34. So let's say we are going to test this with 3 sets of data. So we have to have the foreign heat in order to check the expected result as well. So we need to look at the formula. That's nothing but C or Celsius into 9/5. Correct me team, like if I go wrong with the formula, because it's purely mathematics. Celsius into 9/5 plus 32 will be your value, and I'll look at the absolute value of this. Okay, so this is what it is, and if you just drag it below, your formula gets copied and you'll get to see your expected foreign heat values for the corresponding Celsius values. So now we have the test data and we have the functional test case as well. So we'll try to execute that. We take the application, and the first step is invoke the application. I had already done the first step. We had executed the first step, and we look at the second step, enter valid values. Okay, so we'll move to the test data. We'll take 23 as the first value. Okay, and what the test case says now, the third step is click on the submit button, and the expected value is the corresponding foreign heat value should be displayed. Okay, so click on the submit button. We can see it's 73.4. We can validate that against test data. Yes, it's true. So we'll move on to the next. Value in the test data sheet. Next Celsius value, it's -40. So we got -40 here. Since we are converting it to the absolute value, we got 40, so it's a pass again. So the last value is 34 in the test data. We'll look at it. So 93.2 is the same as what we got as the expected result. So all the 3 sets of test data got through, they got passed. So what we do as a part of the execution, we will mark the status as pass, and if at all if there is a deviation between the expected and actual, we'll make it as a fail. So we are pretty much done with our manual testing, and this is our reporting. It says that the test case got through or got passed. Now we'll look at the web service testing. Okay, so we did see the simple application over here, right? So what is it to do with web services? We might be wondering. See, this is the application. Yes, I had tested it very well by giving the values in the foreign heat to Celsius and Celsius to foreign heat, and I have tested it. So I'm pretty much confident enough that it's working fine for me from the UI side. But team, you need to make it a point that when we click on the submit button, it makes a call to the web services. The web service that is being hosted by some other third party. Here the third party is W3 Schools. We are trying to use our application to interact with the W3 Schools web service that is hosted by them on their server, on their side. Okay. So what happens behind the scenes is, so this is what it is. This is your UI, which we did see. It sends a request, it sends the Celsius value to the web service, and it gets a response in Fahrenheit back from the web service. Got it? This is what happens at the back end. So we are supposed to test the web service as well. That's why I told you team yesterday that as demanding or as mandatory is web testing, web service testing will also be down the line. Okay? So we'll try to understand this in detail a bit. So this is our front-end application. So what it does, you give the values here and you click on the submit button. As soon as you do that, what it does is it will prepare a common format of data, basically XML, which stands for extensible markup language. It's basically a data carrier, okay? And then it gets converted to a web service. It will call a web service. This data will be formatted in this format and then it will be hitting the web service. It will be hitting the web service which is hosted on the W3 school side for our example. Okay? So basically this is what we do and this is what happens in the background. So we think that, testing the UI or GUI is all that we do, but team, I'm just stressing on that as demanding or as mandatory is your web testing or functional testing. Down the line, web services is going to turn out to be the same because we are going to test it from the UI and from the backend as well. Okay, so this is what happens at the backend. So we are going to test this part. So now we are done with this part. Sorry for that, I'm not good at drawing, So we'll be concentrating on this part as well. In fact, team, if you look at the real-time apps or applications, we'll be first doing this testing and then we'll move on to this testing. Traditionally, it used to happen like the developers used to test this part earlier a few years back. Now it's not the practice team. Now it's entirely into the hands of testing or the QA people, and we are supposed to do this testing first and then move on to we are moving on to the UI testing. Okay. So basically we have to confirm that this piece is working fine, then only we'll be moving on to this piece. So we'll try to do this piece now. We'll try to understand how web service testing will be. So we'll quickly move on to the web service writing. We'll try to write a couple of web service test case as well. Just one written here already for you. So we'll try to execute this. We're trying to invoke soap UI and then we'll see whether the soap UI got displayed, and then we create a new project. So I'll show you this. So how are we going to do this? We are going to open a new soap project, give the project name. I'll say day 2. Or something relevant can be given. You can say converting temperature and then we come across a term called WSDL. WSDAL, and we'll be talking a lot about WSDAL, which we call it as WSDL and WADLs also. Okay, so WSDL is basically it's a web service description language, and some of the people say that it's a definition language as well, but as it stands, it's a web service description language. So we did see the XML, which stands for extensible markup language. I'll just add this to the acronym so that it will act as a reference for you team at a later point. So XML stands for extensible markup language, and basically used as a data carrier, and will also allow to have custom tags. What are these custom tags and what is the benefit that we incur by using the XML? What is XML? What is XML schema? All this we will be discussing in the subsequent sessions, and we'll also have practice sessions. We'll look at the XML schema, use it for the projects, and we'll have assignments around that as well. And the next term we did use now is WSDL, web service description language. So what does it do at a high level, at 30,000 feet? What we can say is it will describe the web service as of how it has to be. Okay, so this is the term, and this is what it stands for. I'll say abbreviation and a short description. However, team, in the study material you will get to have a polished definition for this, which you can reproduce at the time of interviews, but added to that, make sure that you give an example while you're giving the interview. Okay, so basically when it comes to web service understanding, so it talks about data and it talks about the target points, or we call them as end points. Okay, where are we hitting and what is the access that we are providing? Those sort of information will be embedded along with the data in an XML file, which is nothing but your WSDL. Okay, we will be looking deep, we'll be going into deep with WSDL. What is WSDL, how a WSDL will look like, how to write the WSDLs, and what is the content of a WSDL, and you will be working on WSDLs as well as a part of the assignments, how to write WSDL. So you'll be seeing that and you'll be writing that, no need to worry. But at this particular point, just we need to understand it's a description which we will be giving to the web service. So going back, it can be a file stored on your local machine. By clicking on browse, you can navigate to that file, or else you can straight away give the URL. We'll look at the test data sheet for our URL of the WSDL. We have the WSDL address here. So add the WSDL address here, and we are going to create a test suite using SOAP UI for the web service testing. Okay, say OK. We can see the project created here. Okay, and it's asking, do we need to create a test suite for us? Okay, we'll say yes, and you have different options here. One test case for each operation. A web service basically is defined or described by a WSDL, and a WSDL does have all the operations or methods that we can perform as a part of the web service. Here we have two methods. One is Celsius to Fahrenheit and the other one is Fahrenheit to Celsius. So it's asking us whether we are asking the tool to create one test case for each operation, or one test case for each request. Okay. And we can even select the operations here or deselect them and ask the test tool to develop the test case for us. So okay, and you need to give a test suite name here. Okay. So here we have two sets. Okay, remote one set. This is the test suite that Soap UI had created for testing the web service for us. Okay, if you look into the test steps, there's one test step. Okay, you need to double click on the test step to get what is there on the test step. Okay, so team, this is what is there on your test step, Celsius to Fahrenheit. So this is what you are supposed to concentrate. Okay, this is nothing but the only difference that you can observe here is instead of giving the value in the UI here, what we will be doing is you develop the test suite, you go to the test case and then go to the test step, open the test step and look for this particular tag, and instead of question mark over there, we give the value from the test data which we had prepared earlier. It's 23. Okay, you just give the value over there. And team, this is the basic step that we are doing. On the top of that, we have a lot of things where we can add assertions. So it's automatically it will validate and it will give the result for us. And also we can see the logs. We can add attachments as well. And on the top of that, we will be having data-driven tests developed for us. We'll automate these operations. So in the subsequent sessions, we are going to do all that. So for now, we'll just run this. So we got the value here, 73.4. We'll validate it against Fahrenheit. Yes, it is. So our test got passed for the first set of value. So team, we'll just quickly move on to the other two as well before I switch on to the question and answer session. Okay, we have 40 and 34. So I need to change this to 40 and run it again. Okay. So I've changed this to 40 and then I'll run it again and I'll check the response. For 40 it's 104, but our value here is minus 40. So we'll check against minus 40. We got minus 40, which is expected because this is the absolute value. Okay. So we'll go with the third value as well, and we'll see if at all if our test case is getting passed. So the third value is 34. So we'll quickly run the test. It's 93.2. Yes, it is the expected value. So everything got passed over here. Okay. So, and this is how you develop and execute the test cases, and this is the basic step, team. I'm repeating, this is the basic step. We have a lot to do on the same project. We'll try to develop assertions. We'll try to do dynamic value generation, and we'll try to even give the values at the runtime. Okay, that we'll be discussing in the subsequent sessions. but for now we'll look at the reporting as well. So as I said before, SOAP UI does come with a huge range or a wide set of features, and one among that is the reporting. Okay, so there's one more version of SOAP UI. It's not version, there's one more tool called as SOAP UI Pro, which is nothing but SOAP UI with some advanced features, which comes with a license along with that. So we need to purchase the license and use that. However, it comes with a free 14-day trial version, which we'll be using to understand some advanced features as well during the fag end sessions, during the advanced concepts discussion. Okay. So this is how we do the web service testing, the basic step, and on the top of that we do the assertions and some other data manipulations will be done using the tool, and dynamic generation of data, dynamic providing the data. Okay, so you can add the properties as well. If you look at your test step, so you can run the test step as well, you can run the test case, and you can run the test suite also separately. Okay, at any level you can execute it. So this is the test data. We'll just simply see one feature. There are a lot of features. So one feature, we are trying to add some data here. So I'll say Celsius is the property name that we are going to add, and we're going to give the value here, say -40, which can be dynamically given, which we'll see in the subsequent sessions. Okay. So now we'll see, we'll run the test case and see. Yes, it's a pass again. Only thing is that we had changed the test data here. Instead of directly giving the value, we are setting a reference. We are adding a property to the test case. Okay. And team, what you need to note here is there's only one text box or one value in our application. Okay, when we talk about this test case, there might be 10 to 20 or more than that text boxes or values or intake for the application. If at all, if you look at registration of a particular website like Yahoo or Gmail, you can see it will ask for 4 to 5 fields values. So we'll be having 4 to 5 tags here, and we'll be seeing how to manipulate the test data. Okay. So that piece will be covered in the subsequent session, in the next session. So let's have a quick recap of what we have done. We had created the test suite, and we had executed the test suite, which in turn validates the application, not from the front end but from the web services side, that is from the back end. We did try to change the values, we did check for different tests, different sets of test data, and we also saw how to change the test data here. And we did look at the reporting, but team, when it comes to the reporting, we have a separate session for that, because SOAP UI does have very good features in reporting. Okay. So we are done with the basic web service testing and basic functional testing as well. Let's try to understand what are the differences between these two, because people might be thinking that it's a piece which has to be done by the developers. However, as I told you, in today's world, it's a cup of tea of the testing world. So it's best to understand the differences between the functional testing versus web services testing. Not many differences will be there, team. Let me tell you this. What we have done here, we have entered the values in GUI and we validated. And validated the responses in GUI again. We got a page where the values got displayed. Whereas in web service testing, what you did, we had entered the values in the request XML and validated the response XML. Okay, and one more point which we'll be doing is, usually we'll go for validating the request file as well. Okay, it's a validation which will be taken care by Soap UI, whether the XML is well formed or not. So what is well formed XML, that we'll be seeing in the later sessions. So added to that, validate the XML as well. Okay, so not many differences are there, if you could see. And here we have a GUI. Here we don't have a GUI. Okay, we don't have any GUI. Okay, here the application requests for response. Okay, the application provides the, or we provide the data, rather we can say, which is covered in the first step. Okay, so these are a few differences. I'll just try to add some more. Before that, we'll try to quickly answer some questions. So before going to the questions, let me just quickly recap of what we have learned. We try to understand the application, then scope of the application, then writing the functional test cases, executing the functional test cases, then writing the web service test cases, developing the test suites using Soap UI, executing the test suites, understanding the request file, understanding the response file, dynamic test data creation, okay, to the basic level we did see, and the reporting as well. Okay, we'll look at the questions now. Just give me a minute while I copy the questions for you. So these are the set of questions. We'll just try to quickly go through. Yes, certain part of the session we had repeated from that of day one, just to give you the continuous flow. I thought the web service testing is done by the developer. Is that true? As I told you during the session, yes, it was, but it's not now the scenario. It was a cup of tea of the developers earlier, but in the recent years the trend got changed. The web services testing is done by the individual testing teams. So how do we test the web service offline? We'll deploy the web services locally and we'll be testing that. I'm just trying to delete all these questions so that we can move ahead. So the question is, how do we test the web services offline? Okay, it was asked by Banu. Banu, we will be deploying the web services in our local machine or on our local servers even before jumping onto the host or hosting the web service online. Okay, so I think it did answer your question. We will deploy the service locally and then we will host it on the web, and we have a centralized repository called UDDI, which we'll talk much in detail in the later sessions, where different companies like Google, IBM, Microsoft, and even if we have a stake in that, if we can also publish our web services over there and make them available across. Okay, so to precisely answer your question, we'll deploy them locally and we'll test them, then we'll move on to deploying them or hosting them over the web. So Soap UI deals with Groovy script, while Soap UI Pro we don't need the Groovy script much. So do we need to learn Groovy also? To enhance your script you need to learn Groovy, but Groovy does come up with a rich set of libraries which we will be seeing in one of the sessions, how to make use of those libraries to enhance your script. So that part, how much Groovy script you needed, that will be covered as a part of the training. So when is the next demo? It will be communicated. Which version of Soap UI you are using? It's 4.5.2. We can download the latest version from the web or from the net. It's a freeware, as I told you. So how can we know? The next question is, Bharat is asking us, how can we know all the web service, know or see all the web service offered by a particular company, say W3 Schools or Amazon? Okay, get their visuals and start using them in Soap UI. So Bharat, whenever a company is hosting a set of web service and you are trying to use those web services, it will give you the definition of the web services, which is nothing but WSDL files. We are not going to test each and every web service unless until it's a part of our project. Yes, if it's a part of our project, the WSDL files will be shared, and at times you will be a part of the development of the WSDL files as well. Okay, if at all, if your company has a stake in testing the web service for Amazon or W3 Schools or whatever the organization it is which does host the web service, you will be getting all the relevant and related files. Okay, you'll get the WSDLs, you'll get the URLs. Okay, basically they will be publishing them in a centralized repository called UDDI. You can find more material on the web. However, we'll discuss this in detail, how to host them. Could you show us some sample services hosted on a server not on your local machine? The one which we did work on is not hosted on the local machine, Bharat. It is hosted by W3 Schools on the web. So to make you understand only this point, I did take that from the web. Okay, but in our next session we'll try to deploy the services locally as well. So those are the questions. Hope I did answer all. If at all, if there are any other questions that are not answered, we will be placing the answers in the IT eLearn portal. You can come back, team, and watch the video For your reference, we'll place the video, the Excel sheet which we had created, and the question and answers as well. Having said that, thanks a lot for your time. Have a great day.